where the ancestors speak. Roots dig deep, never turning weak. Echoes of the past, future we seek. Central African vibe, soul's mystique.
Alright, family. So, thanks for tuning in. This is Tales from the Griot, Volume 1, Episode 2, Sacred Forest Groves of Central Africa. So this will be an exploration of the sacred forests and groves of Central Africa. These natural sanctuaries hold deep spiritual and cultural significance for the communities that revere them. Join us as we delve into their origins, functions, and rich traditions surrounding these mystical places. Sources: Material Values of the Teke People, a study by James Green, exploring the material culture of West Central African peoples from 1880 to 1920. That is a really good source. I'm not sure if this was like somebody's master thesis or dissertation, something along the lines of that, but it's very, very valuable. It's not like traditionally a book or something, but it is more like a research project. So anybody who's interested in learning more about the Teke, this is a really good resource, and it's relatively new. I want to say it goes to it's like 2017, 2019 it was made. Really good resource. Next one is History and Grandeur of the Teke of the Bantu people. It's a French book, so that's why things are kind of, different with the title. Comprehensive work by Anisit Bongo Ndima, detailing the history and greatness of the Bantu people. This book is also Teke centered as well. I believe that gentleman is relative to the former president. I think it was Ali Bongo. Yeah, but it's another really good resource on Bantu culture as well as the Teke people. So, sacred forests and groves of Central Africa. These are natural sanctuaries. Sacred forests and groves are natural areas with dense vegetation that hold deep significance for local communities. Spiritual significance: these areas are revered for their spiritual and cultural importance, serving as connections to ancestral traditions. So this will be focused on Central Africa. This exploration centers on sacred forests and groves found throughout Central Africa, examining their unique characteristics and roles. This topic in general was really fun to research, mainly because this is something I came to understand or know that took place once I touched down. I would hear about it in different respects. So you hear about certain areas in the forest that you can't go because it's sacred. And I will always wonder, what's a sacred forest? I mean, I can understand, alright, so there's like a place you can't go, and, they might hold rituals there, but I really wanted to explore how did these places become sacred? What made them sacred? How did they get to that point? And what exactly is their function and what do they do there? Because I will hear it come up in regards to tribes. You might hear a tribe has a sacred forest, or there might be a spiritual tradition that has a sacred forest or a sacred grove or a place you can't go. So I wanted to explore that in this research. So, defining sacred forest or grove. What is a sacred forest or grove? It's a natural area. It's pretty much the last one. Yeah, we have mature trees. It's a spiritual area, and the community is centered around this specific area. So, like I said, it could be a spiritual community or it could be a tribal community, and they have these areas where it's sacred. You can't just be frolicking through the forest and frolic through the sacred grove or the sacred forest. So to understand a sacred grove or a sacred forest, you have to understand a village, because they're as you'll come to understand, they're connected. You can't really separate the two. So inception of sacred forest groves. How are they sacred? How are they created? What makes them sacred? So natural formation. Sacred forests often begin as natural areas with unique or impressive features that capture the community's attention. It has spiritual recognition. The area is recognized for its spiritual potential, often through visions, dreams, or traditional knowledge passed down through generations. Ritual consecration. A formal ceremony or ritual may be performed to officially designate the area as sacred, establishing its spiritual status within the community.
One question real quick for you, brother.
Sure.
Yes. So is there a difference between a forest and a grove?
They're often used interchangeably. So if it's a sacred forest, it could also be termed a sacred grove.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not much nuance between the two. It's just whatever is in the lexicon in that area. All right. So like I said, you have to address the inception of a village or of what a village is to understand what a sacred forest is or a sacred grove is. So right now I'm just going to get into a village and the inception of a village. So let's say we have our community, Roots of Unity, Gabon. Let's say we all came together and we said, we're going to build a village, and we were living in the ancient times with our ancestors. There's actually a method that the ancestors would use, in Central Africa when founding a village. So you would, get a site and you would plant some palm trees. So these palm trees are essential trees planted during village establishment, providing resources and spiritual significance. So we would plant some trees, specifically these palm trees. You might even want to have some banana leaf trees. Everything you're planting, we're going to realize that it's kind of like having a corner store or some type of market. You're going to pretty much plant what you can use and what you want in a village. So we're going to be living in the center of it, and around it we're going to plant some palm trees. Around it we're going to plant some medicinal fruit trees. Trees with healing properties are cultivated to support the community's health and well-being. Because naturally, if somebody is in a village and they get sick, you don't want them to have to run miles into a forest to find medicinal trees. We want to plant them in the village so that we just go in our backyard, grab them. Trees for rites. Specific trees are planted or preserved for use in traditional ceremonies and rituals. So, there's a lot of rites of passages that go on, and certain trees might be used for rites as far as like they use it for decorating the outfit. So if anybody's seen some of the photos of whether it's the Bwiti tradition or other traditions, they see how they implement like leaves as part of the outfit. Then you have the waste from the village. This is organic waste that contributes to the growth and fertility of the surrounding forest area. So let's say we have some fruit trees or whatever, you just throw them on the outskirts of the village, and it actually helps with the fertility of the soil. So it's an ecosystem that kind of replenishes itself, but like I said, these villages are well thought out, so you have all these different trees that make sense, that kind of are, like I said, it's a method to it. I also want to touch on this Otogo tree. The Otogo tree is, it also goes by ironwood because it's such a strong tree. It's also, somewhat of a palaver tree. Like people will go around that tree if they want to discuss issues in the village. So that's the inception of our village. We created a village. We planted all these different trees, and we're in the center. So everything we're planting, like even the picture that's on the screen, so just imagine those those houses in the center, and then there's like the trees that surround it. So we're in the center. All those trees are surrounding us that we planted. Now, there's a life to the village, that we've created. Villages don't last forever. People do abandon villages. So I did want to touch on that because that's necessary, and also understanding why people would abandon a village. So certain reasons people would abandon a village is the death of a chief, loss of leadership could lead to a village being abandoned, increase in mortality, high death rates cause villagers to leave, rarefication of game, so that's depletion of hunting resources, soil depletion, so or compromise food security, so agriculture challenges threaten survival, internal dissension or fear of attacks, so conflicts can lead to people abandoning villages, multiplication of trees and excessive shade. So if you have an overgrowth at the village, you say, man, we out of here. We leave the villages. So those are some reasons people would leave the village. All right. So, before I touch on Ekano Atani, I want to, bring us back up to speed where we are right now. So we started a village. We planted all these things on the outskirts of a village, and we abandoned the village. So what do you think would happen after we abandoned that village? What are some things that could naturally occur? Anybody got any suggestions?
Regrowth, like the villages start to be able to, the plant life and stuff would continue to grow. The plants that you I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. You hit it on the head. You hit it on the head. That's exactly what happened. When we hollowed out that area and put our house in the middle, and we planted everything around, that stuff requires some type of maintenance or hedging, and it doesn't take long. They say relatively short time. We talking 10 years, and now you have, the encroachment of those medicinal plants into the center, the encroachments of the atogo plant and a tree into the center, the encroachment of the trees for rights and palm trees. It's all starting to go into the hollowed out area. So now we have Iko Atani and Kakini Ka Nsia, establishing sacred connection. Eko Atani, the founding act that establishes the sacred relationship between a village and its grove. The ritual solidifies the spiritual connection between the community and the natural world. So Eko Atani. Kakini Ka Nsia translates to supports of the earth. This concept emphasizes the crucial role that sacred groves play in maintaining the balance and well-being of the community and the natural world. So we created this village. We had to abandon the village. Let's say there's an outbreak of some type of disease or an animal died amongst the village. We didn't know what it is. And next thing you know, disease starts to spread. So roots of unity spreads out. We go like a mile down the road. A mile down the road or so. And we form a new village. Time passes, but we still remember, hey, that's where, we used to live. That's where our ancestors are buried. That's where, our ancestors sang and danced. That's where we used to live. So we would have a ceremony called Eko Atani that will establish the relationship between our new village and our previous village that's now turned into a sacred forest or a sacred grove. So that's Eko Atani. Eko Atani is the establishment. It's the connection. It's a ritual act, but it's also a folklore story, that has to do with, sacred villages and communities. Kakini Ka Insi, the supports of the earth. I really wanted to highlight that because it shows the importance or the emphasis that they put on, these sacred forests or sacred groves, that they view them as the supports of the earth. So it's supporting their world. Their world is supported by these sacred forests and sacred groves. So the functions of a sacred forest or a sacred grove. Administrative functions. Sacred forests serve as important sites for community decision making, conflict resolution, and the preservation of traditional governance structures. Spiritual functions. These groves are central to religious and spiritual practices, hosting rituals, ceremonies, and serving as conduits for communities with ancestral spirits and deities. Dual role. The sacred forests uniquely combine administrative and spiritual functions, reinforcing the interconnectedness of governance and spirituality in Central African cultures. So, we left Roots of Unity, left the village, we founded a new village, and let's say over time, Brother Ibaka, his family starts to grow. They grow so much that they begin to create their own sub-clan. So they leave the current village that we're at, and same with Brother Dave, and let's say I'm still at the old village that we were all central at after leaving what is now a grove. So you have these different clans in different villages. So, like this picture, there might be court being held in Brother Ibaka's village. This might be his village right here, and they're holding court. And it'll be the same with Brother Dave. He'll have a place where he holds court, and I'll be holding court in our village. But there'll come a time where we all have to come together. When we all have to come together and make decisions or judgments or any type of administrative function, I'm not going to go to Brother Ibaka's village. He's not coming to ours. I'm not going to Brother Dave's. We're all going to link at the sacred forest. So we're all going to go back to the sacred forest or grove from which we all came. But if it was a matter of the village, of an individual village, it will be handled within the individual village. When it's a matter that has to do with, more congressional matters that involve multiple plans or multiple clans and, what they call, the destiny of the tribe, things that are bigger than just the clan, just a clan itself or a family itself or a village itself. That's where you'll go back to the grove. So, that's how it's used administratively. You have spiritual functions. So in some cases, let's say there's a Ganga, and a Ganga lived in in a certain abandoned village, and he was buried there. The Gangas who were a part of that tradition that are still living, they'll go to that site and they'll hold different rituals or traditions or initiations for that person in honor of the legendary Ganga, or the Ganga that may have started the tradition. So it could become a spiritual site as well. And in a lot of cases, let's say, that sacred grove or that sacred forest that we descended from, it could have different parts to it. So it could have a part to it that deals with the spiritual, and it could have a part to it that deals with the administrative, and it's just one single, it was just one single village, but over time, the functions have been, divided amongst maybe different sides or different parts of the single, sacred forest. Then it has a dual role. So things that are administrative and spiritual, in Central Africa or West Africa in general, there's very little difference between administration and spiritual. So let's say a king might have certain sacred objects that he used to rule. He might go to the sacred forest to clean his objects. Like, that's the actual ritual. Like, you go there and you'll clean your objects, just to make sure they're, spiritually clean. And it kind of invigorates the administrative function. So there's always that dual role as well. So, want to thank you all for joining this exploration into Central Africa's sacred forests and groves. Your interest in these important and cultural spiritual sites is greatly appreciated. We hope this journey has inspired you to further explore and respect the rich tradition surrounding sacred natural spaces. If you look at the picture on the right, that foresty area, that's a sacred forest. As an example of a sacred forest, it's an actual sacred forest. Actually you have literature at the top that said a set of these Izwa is a forest, or a single Izwa, formed the Nsi of an individual ruler known as the Ngansi, master of the earth. Certain Izwa, such as Mbe Nkolo, were formerly settlements that were abandoned after death and of the previously reigning Makoko. So they said when you see these things, especially in the savannah, where, Central Africa, a lot of savannah area, they stand out like a sore thumb. Like, you're just walking along, and you see something like this. People who are from that area, they know, like, that's not I don't know if I should say it's not a naturally occurring forest, but it's a man-made forest. Let's put it that way. It was made by someone's ancestors. It was made by their ancestors in the area. So you just look across the savannah and you see these little things, and it tells a story. You see it, and you see, a timeline, cause you see them all over the place, and they really don't have, an issue being mobile or abandoning a village and it turning into a sacred forest or grove. They were always mobile in their living. And I think it's a testament to the preservation of nature, natural preservation, where nowadays you hear a lot about loggers and the environments being destroyed and things of that nature, where at least we could say, well, the way of life our ancestors were living was actually producing forests. Our natural way of life was producing forests everywhere we went. We would leave life behind. We weren't just destroying the land. And I think it's something for us to be very proud of, that our way of life championed nature. It championed, this is what we left behind. We didn't leave behind a destruction or deserts or anything like that. We left behind these sacred forests and groves. But that concludes my presentation.
Bravo, brother, bravo.
Thank you. Really good.
You.
Really good. You got some questions, brother Ibaka?
No questions. I'm interested in hearing some questions. Yeah.
I got some questions. I just wanted to see if you had it first. So, brother Carr, once again, man, I really appreciate that. Was a really good lecture on the sacred forest. You really kind of broadened my understanding of the sacred forests and of our clans, right? So when we look at what you had just mentioned at the last part, when you was talking about basically reforestation and how indigenously we were sustainable, right? When the villages was created, the mindset wasn't after trade, right? When it wasn't after trade to where where you see other cultures come and deplete their resources. They come through and they kind of, strip the land for everything and then they move on. We kind of, built the land, and they just left it and let it be. The question I would have for you is when we're talking about, the reforestation, I don't know if they mentioned it in the sources that you mentioned, but how many times, like in a person's lifetime, would they move to another village, or would they kind of like, go from village or creating another village or from that? Like, how often did you see that happen?
That's an excellent question. No, they didn't say how often it would happen. It only mentioned that it would only take about 10 years for an abandoned village to turn into a sacred forest or a sacred grove. But based on, like some of the reasons I've seen people leaving, it's not something that I would imagine would happen definitely not multiple times in one person's life. Not multiple times in one person's lifetime. Maybe, I'm not even sure once a lifetime. I mean, it's really hard to say, depending on the reasons. As far as like the time frame, maybe there were times where it was more hostile in the territory and they had to keep moving, or like I said, disease and stuff like that. That something like that doesn't happen often. So I would imagine it varies, but no, they didn't specifically say that. But that's an excellent question.
Gotcha. All right, cool. And this is more of a statement. So like, now you see the Europeans have used that term. If you go on YouTube, the term that they use for basically what we were doing is called basically creating food forest, right? And planting trees and stuff like that. And it's crazy that what you mentioned about it only taking 10 years for the whole thing to kind of be repopulated with natural elements. That's the exact same thing that they're talking about online now. I'm really into agriculture, so I kind of like study some of this stuff. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the practices that they try to rephrase, like you might hear sometimes I might say something like syntropic agriculture or something like I just mentioned, like food forest. It's the exact same principles.
Right.
It is basically, building trees around your domiciles and allowing the basic, like I've seen like people recreate, whole mountains, like a whole mountain, they repopulate the whole mountain. There's a book, by this Japanese dude called I think it's called the Green Revolution. No, the One Straw Revolution. And that's a really good book and it describes the principles of what they're doing. And when it's basically just like leaving nature to do nature and kind of like come off of that. That was really interesting. Another question I do have since I can ask some questions now. So did they go into any detail about any more details about any of the kind of like the rituals or ceremonies that they would use to kind of like consecrate the sacred forest, or did they have any like rituals when they left it to kind of like establish this as sacred?
No, not leaving. I didn't really hear of anything. Only the establishment is what I heard of, because this was something that, like an example I gave you, that, we all start off in the same village, then we leave, then you guys, your family grow and you form a clan and you go somewhere else. Essentially the same process is going to keep happening. So Ibaka's, when he leave his clan, they're going to abandon villages and they're going to have their own sacred, somewhat of their
I got you.
So it just crescendos, and one thing I really should have highlighted more is these sacred groves and forests become hierarchical. So even within the Ibaka's, family and clan, and everybody isn't going to be able to access the sacred forest that they might have initially abandoned. Only the top dogs in his clan can enter the forest that they initially abandoned, and only the top dog of the top dog can advance to the sacred forest of which we all descend from. So it's very hierarchical. So there was always an emphasis on establishing the connections, but I didn't really come across anything that broke down it when you're leaving and there's any ritual done.
So, and I see Ibaka has his hand up. Let me ask one more question, Ibaka, about what he just mentioned. So when they abandoned the villages, what happened to the structures that they created to live in? Did they end up going back into the earth because they were natural, or what happened with those?
And that's a good question too. I didn't see anything that gave an explanation for that, because I don't know if it's because naturally some of these resources. Well, I haven't read a resource from a first-hand account, and I'm not even sure if they're allowed to say. I know these people definitely weren't allowed to just go there and start snapping photos. But that's a really good question. Like, would you see like an old rundown house like that?
Yeah, because, most of the houses were, they constructed them out of the ground or, the trees and stuff like that. And over time so one thing I know that is when you're talking about like rammed earth or, mud houses, right? They can last for upwards of 100, 200 years. They will kind of deteriorate as they go, as things go on, but they can last for a while. That's why I was wondering, because I would, even though I know it's sacred, but I would just love to be able to see, that kind of, I would love to see that, man.
Like that's something I didn't think about. I do have people I could ask. There was a couple people that actually helped me, get a better understanding of the networks that are involved in this. That's a question I'll ask them. I'll see if I can get back to you on that.
All right. Appreciate it, man.
No doubt.
Excellent, man. Excellent, man. Really appreciate this presentation.
Tales from the Griot where the ancestors speak. Roots dig deep, never turning weak. Echoes of the past future we seek. Central African vibe, soul's mystique.